My name is Elena Sterling. I'm 36 years old, and I'm standing in the dead center of the Charlotte Grandview Hotel's majestic ballroom. Around me, 250 of the city's most influential people are lifting their champagne glasses to toast the new CEO. My sister, Chloe, had just delivered a speech dripping with false modesty and ambition, her smile looking like she'd already conquered the world. Then, she leaned a little closer to the microphone, her voice carrying a sudden, sharp edge that cut through the polite applause. And as my first official act, she announced, her eyes finding mine across the sea of faces, "Elena Sterling, you are relieved of your duties, effective immediately. Security will escort you out." A sudden sharp intake of breath rippled through the room. 250 heads swiveled in my direction. Champagne flutes paused mid-air. I heard an audible gasp from a table nearby, but I didn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction. I didn't flinch, I didn't cry, I didn't even blink. I simply reached for the plastic guest badge clipped to the lapel of my black dress, unfastened it with a steady hand, and placed it softly on the white linen tablecloth, right next to my full, untouched glass of champagne. I then looked directly at Chloe, my voice as calm and even as a frozen lake. "Tell Mom and Dad the board meets in 3 hours." Then I turned. The clicks of my heels on the polished marble floor echoed in the sudden cavernous silence. Behind me, I could hear the pop and flash of phone cameras, a sad, pathetic imitation of a red carpet scandal. The grand double doors whispered shut behind me, sealing me off from the spectacle. If you've ever been publicly and professionally executed by your own flesh and blood, especially at their victory party, you know that hollow, burning sensation in the pit of your stomach. Go ahead and drop a like if you have a family story that still makes your skin crawl. And I want to hear it. Comment below what's the most vicious thing a sibling has ever done to you in front of everyone. I promise you, what's about to unfold in the next 180 minutes will make every single one of your stories sound like a fairy tale. And you'll want to be here for it, so hit that subscribe button because you won't want to miss how this entire night gets turned on its head. The second those doors closed, the real game began. The countdown was on. I was already in the driver's seat of my dark gray Sequoia before the murmurs in that ballroom had a chance to swell into full-blown gossip. The engine rumbled to life, a low, steady promise. 28 miles to my house on the outskirts of Lake Norman. On a clear night like this, that's about 32 minutes. More than enough time. I left the radio off. The silence in the car was a sanctuary, broken only by the rhythmic hum of the tires on the asphalt and the quiet, almost thoughtful click of the turn signal as I merged onto I-77 North. By the time I glided into my garage, the house was a dark silhouette against the moonlit sky, the only illumination coming from the motion sensor floodlight above my workbench. I didn't even bother going inside through the kitchen. I walked straight to the workbench, where my laptop had been charging since 6 o'clock this morning. I flipped it open, my face unlocking the screen in a fraction of a second, and navigated to the folder I had labeled simply Contingency. Everything was there, waiting. The encrypted email ready to be deployed to every board member and registered shareholder. The physical packets for certified mail, already addressed, stamped, and sealed. The digital signature on the primary document was time-stamped at 6:03 a.m. All it took was a single press of my finger on the trackpad, one click to send the email blast, another click to confirm the courier pickup, already scheduled for 14 minutes from now. It was done. People think that seizing majority control of a company is some dramatic overnight hostile takeover. It's not. It's a slow, quiet, methodical process. For me, it started with a single, half-page agreement I signed when I was 19 years old and too proud to take the easy money everyone else was taking. Back in 2007, Apex Logistics was just a 20-person operation, a handful of trucks running out of a dusty warehouse north of the city. My father, Richard, offered me a director title and a salary of $180,000 a year. A fortune for a teenager. I told him no. I told him I'd rather have equity. He actually chuckled, a deep patronizing sound, before signing over a measly 0.8% of the company. "Fine, kid," he'd said. "Go on, own the dirt under the building." I never sold a single share. In 2011, when we were breaking ground on the massive Southeast cold chain expansion, I took another 4% of the company instead of the executive bonus that Chloe and the others gleefully cashed. In 2014, after Chloe, in a fit of arrogant incompetence, nearly locked us into a disastrous partnership that would have cost the company $42 million, I was the one who quietly, behind the scenes, convinced the board to add Section 14, subsection C, to our corporate bylaws. They called me paranoid. I remember hearing the whispers in the hallway. I called it insurance. By 2016, a refrigerated tech startup in Raleigh that we acquired owed me another 12% for being the sole architect of the deal that saved them from bankruptcy and made us millions. Then, in 2020, when Mom and Dad wanted some liquidity to fund a massive remodel of their vacation home on Hilton Head, I was the one who bought their golden shares. I paid them fair market value, no family discount asked for or offered. They thought they were doing me a favor, helping their less successful daughter build a small nest egg. They had no idea. Piece by piece, deal by deal, I just kept stacking shares until the official ledger, filed quietly with the state of North Carolina, showed a controlling interest of 71% under one name, Elena Sterling. There was no plaque on a door, no mention on the company website. It just existed silently in the state filings, an unbreakable fact. I closed the laptop, the soft click echoing in the quiet garage. I leaned my head back against the leather headrest and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding since Chloe first stepped up to that podium. Across town, my younger brother Leo was probably live on Instagram, his phone angled just right to capture the glittering crystal chandeliers behind him. I could see it perfectly in my mind's eye. Him grinning, arm draped around Chloe, with a caption already typed out. New era loading. Next generation taking over. The likes and flame emojis were no doubt pouring in. He had no clue that the new era he was so busy celebrating had exactly 2 hours and 46 minutes left to live. In the VIP section of the ballroom, the first phone vibrated. Arthur Vance, the silver-haired attorney who had drafted every significant contract for Apex Logistics since it was just 3 guys and a single warehouse back in 1997, felt the buzz against his chest as he was lifting a bite of grilled salmon to his lips. A single glance at his phone screen made his face go as white as a sheet of printer paper. He stood up so abruptly that his chair screeched against the marble floor. A sound so sharp and ugly, it momentarily pierced through the pleasant melodies of the string quartet. Without a word of apology to his table mates, he grabbed my father's elbow with one hand and my mother's wrist with the other, and practically frog-marched them toward the nearest service exit. The narrow backstage corridor reeked of hot catering trays and wilting flowers. Arthur, using a keycard he absolutely should not have had, swiped them into a small, windowless conference room, locking the door behind them. He handed Dad his phone as if it were a live grenade. My father took it with both hands, his thumbs turning white as they gripped the edges. He read the cover page of the document once, blinked hard as if to clear his vision, and read it again. His eyes snagged on the one paragraph that truly mattered. He read every single word, his lips moving silently. When his eyes landed on the line stating that any unilateral executive termination by a non-equity appointee would instantly suspend all corporate authority and revert full control to the majority shareholder, all the air seemed to rush out of his lungs in one long, slow collapse. His shoulders slumped forward as if invisible strings holding him upright had been snipped. My mother, Catherine, leaned over his arm, her eyes catching my electronic signature at the bottom of the page. The tears began to fall before she'd even finished the second sentence. They weren't dramatic, theatrical sobs. They were silent, unstoppable streams that carved black rivers of mascara down her carefully made-up cheeks. She pressed a pristine white linen napkin to her mouth, trying to muffle the small, broken sounds that were escaping. Arthur kept his voice just above a whisper, urgent and low. "Richard, this is live." It was time-stamped at 6:03 this morning. Every single board member and registered shareholder just got this exact same package. We are inside the 3-hour window. There's no way to stop this. My father looked up, his eyes glassy and unfocused. "She doesn't know yet," he rasped. "Not yet," Arthur confirmed grimly. "She's still out there cutting the damn cake." Out in the ballroom, Chloe was laughing, basking in the glow of the spotlights. She was sliding a silver knife through 4 tiers of champagne-soaked vanilla cake, while a dozen cameras flashed like a summer lightning storm. She lifted a perfect slice, waved it victoriously at the adoring crowd, and beamed like the queen of a world she was just minutes away from losing forever. My mother's voice, now cracking with tears, broke the silence. "Richard, get her in here. We have to stop this before it goes any further." Dad was already moving toward the door, his knuckles white as he gripped the handle. Just as my mother was dabbing at the last of her tears with her now crumpled napkin, the door to the small backstage room flew open. Chloe strode in first, followed closely by Leo, both of them still radiating the triumphant energy from the applause that had followed them off the main floor. The door slammed shut behind my father with a force that rattled the framed Supplier of the Year awards hanging on the wall. The perfect practice smile that had been glued to my sister's face all night didn't even waver at first. "What in the world is this about?" she asked, her voice light and dismissive as she smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from her pristine white blazer, as if she were merely inconvenienced before her next big interview. "Did Elena throw another one of her dramatic little tantrums and run crying to you two?" Leo snorted, his thumbs already flying across his phone screen, probably tweeting about the drama. "Typical," he muttered. "She can never stand it when the attention isn't on her." My father didn't say a word. He simply turned the iPad that was lying on the small conference table and slid it across the polished wood surface until it was directly in front of them. The screen was filled with the latest official filing from the North Carolina Secretary of State, displaying the company's ownership breakdown. It was freshly stamped that morning, notarized, certified, and utterly impossible to dispute. A single line, in bold, sat under a single name. Elena Sterling, 71%. Chloe's eyes locked onto that number. Her perfectly lined red lips parted, but no sound came out. The radiant confidence seemed to drain from her face in slow motion, replaced by a mask of pure, uncomprehending shock. Leo leaned over her shoulder, a smirk still playing on his lips, clearly expecting to see some kind of prank or a typo. When the same number stared back at him, his smirk evaporated as if someone had flipped a switch. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Not a word, just a soft wheezing sound. Chloe finally found her voice, a whisper as thin and sharp as a razor blade. "This is fake," she breathed. "This has to be some kind of cheap trick. She can't possibly own." "It's real," Arthur cut in, his voice as flat and professional as it was during a high-stakes deposition. "State stamped at 8:47 this morning. You, Chloe, triggered the exact clause she had me write into the bylaws the day you almost bankrupted us with that West Coast disaster." Chloe's manicured fingers fumbled for her phone in her crystal-encrusted clutch, her thumb already stabbing at my contact. Straight to voicemail. She tried again, pressing the screen harder this time, as if that would change the outcome. The same cold, automated greeting met her ears. She had been blocked since sunrise, and the realization hit her with the force of a physical slap. "This is insane," she hissed, whirling around to face our father, her blazer flaring out around her. "You let her do this. You let her hide this from us." My father's face had become a granite mask, his jaw locked, his eyes hard as flint. "I signed whatever was put in front of me every quarter," he said, his voice cold. "Just like you always did without ever bothering to read past the first paragraph." Leo finally found his words, his voice cracking like an adolescent's. "We can fix this, right? Call the emergency lawyers, file for an injunction, anything." Arthur just shook his head, a single, slow, final gesture. "You have less than 3 hours before the mandatory meeting is called to order. After that, the vote is binding under majority control. No court in North Carolina moves faster than 71%. Chloe's breathing became shallow and rapid. Her eyes darted from the iPad screen to our mother's tear-streaked face, then to our father's clenched fists, desperately searching each face for an ally, a lifeline, a way out. The small room seemed to be shrinking around her with every frantic glance. She tried one last time, her voice breaking completely. She wouldn't destroy her own family over some petty revenge. My father finally met her gaze, his eyes devoid of any warmth. "You destroyed any chance of mercy the moment you humiliated her in front of 250 people who used to work for her." A profound silence descended, swallowing the remaining oxygen in the room. Chloe stood frozen, staring at the glowing screen as the ice-cold truth sank in. Leo just kept refreshing his phone, his thumb shaking, praying for a digital miracle that was never going to come. While Chloe was still staring, dumbfounded at the iPad, every single board member's phone in the ballroom began to vibrate in near unison. The first to buzz was Harold Weinstein's, the chairman of the board, just as his fork, laden with seared scallops, hovered halfway to his mouth. The screen of his phone lit up with the encrypted attachment, the subject line a stark, bold red. "Emergency Shareholder Meeting, Section 14, C activated." Harold's jaw tightened. He placed his fork down with deliberate care, pushed his chair back, and walked directly to the head of security stationed near the east exit. He spoke one sentence, his voice low and clipped. "Lock the room. Nobody leaves." Within 15 seconds, every other board member's device had followed suit. Margaret Klein opened hers, her eyes widening behind her designer reading glasses. Paul Delgado let out a curse under his breath. All around the grand ballroom, phones began to rise like black mirrors, catching the light of the crystal chandeliers. The jazz quartet, sensing the abrupt shift in the atmosphere, hit a discordant note and then simply stopped playing. Security moved with startling speed. 6 additional guards in crisp black suits materialized, taking up positions at the 4 main exits and both service doors. They stood with their arms folded, feet planted, wearing polite smiles that clearly said, "Go on, try me." A venture capitalist near the coat check made a tentative move towards the lobby, only to have a guard step silently into his path, blocking him without a word. Another guest, his phone already pressed to his ear, tried to slip down the west corridor and was met with the same immovable wall of muscle. The message was instantaneous and clear. The party was over. On stage, the hired MC, a well-known local news anchor, sensed the power shift. He took the microphone from a bewildered server who had been about to announce the dessert buffet. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice steady but a little too loud, "if I could have your attention. Please remain in your seats. We will have a brief, unscheduled announcement from the majority shareholder in just a moment. Thank you for your patience." The house lights dimmed another notch, leaving the string lights over the cake table brightly illuminated, making the 4-tiered champagne masterpiece suddenly look garish and absurd. Chloe rushed back out from the private corridor, her cheeks flushed a deep crimson, her perfectly coiffed hair slightly out of place for the first time all evening. She grabbed the microphone stand with both hands as if to steady herself, her knuckles showing white. "Everything is perfectly fine," she declared, the words tumbling out in a rush. "This is just an administrative update. Please, everyone, stay calm and enjoy the rest of the evening." Her right hand was trembling so violently that the microphone let out a piercing squeal of feedback. A nervous laugh rippled from table 12, then died just as quickly. Nobody was buying it. Leo appeared at the edge of the stage, attempting to look casual as he sidled along the velvet curtain toward a service exit, his phone pressed tightly to his ear, his lips moving frantically. He made it 3 steps before a guard materialized directly in front of him, gave a single firm shake of the head, and pointed back toward the ballroom floor. Leo froze, utterly trapped between the guard and 200 pairs of staring eyes. The temperature in the room felt like it had dropped 10 degrees in less than a minute. Champagne went flat in untouched glasses. The waitstaff stood frozen mid-stride, holding silver trays of petit fours. Phones continued to light up, each one displaying the same document, the same ownership table, the same name in bold at the very top. A woman at table 6 gasped loud enough for half the room to hear as her husband tilted his screen toward her. The gasp spread like a virus. Someone whispered 71%, and that number traveled through the room faster than the document itself. Chloe tried again, forcing a smile that looked like it had been painted on by a shaky hand. Really, everyone, there is absolutely nothing to worry about. We'll be back to celebrating in just a moment. Please stay seated. Her voice cracked on the last word, and the microphone shrieked again. No one clapped. No one cheered. The jazz quartet remained silent, their instruments resting on their knees. The MC returned to the stage and gently but firmly took the microphone from Chloe's trembling fingers. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please remain in your seats. The majority shareholder is on site and will address the room directly in the next few minutes. Chloe's grip on the stand slipped completely. She stumbled back, a puppet with its strings cut. Leo was pinned against the wall, his face drained of all color under the golden glow of the chandeliers, his phone now hanging uselessly by his side. As the stage lights dimmed even further, the main doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. I walked straight down the center aisle. I was wearing a simple black sheath dress, my laptop tucked under one arm, my heels making no sound on the thick carpet runner. There was no entourage. No dramatic entrance music, no security guards flanking my sides. There was just the soft, definitive click of the double doors closing behind me and the sudden, profound hush that swallowed every clink of glass and every last murmur of conversation. 250 faces turned to follow my path, their eyes tracking me as if I were the only thing moving in the entire universe. I stepped onto the low stage, placed the laptop on the podium that Chloe had abandoned just minutes before, and opened it. The 60-foot screen behind me flickered to life, displaying the secure voting portal I had personally coded and stress-tested over 3 sleepless nights back in 2018. The interface was clean, brutally efficient, and impossible to hack. "Good evening," I said into the microphone, my voice carrying through the silent room without any effort. "My name is Elena Sterling. As per Section 14, Subsection C of the Apex Logistics Shareholder Agreement, I am calling an emergency shareholder meeting, effective right now. Every registered voter in this room should already have the link on their device." A wave of phones rose in the dim light like a dark tide. Fingers began to tap. Harold Weinstein, the board chairman for the last 12 years, rose from his seat in the front row without a moment's hesitation. He climbed the side steps to the stage, took up a position beside me, and adjusted his glasses. He'd seen the packet an hour ago. He already knew the script. "Motion on the floor," Harold announced, his voice steady and formal. "Immediate rescission of the appointments of Chloe Sterling as Chief Executive Officer and Leo Sterling as Vice President of Sales, as proposed by the majority shareholder. Do I have a second?" Margaret Klein stood up first, her pearl necklace catching the single spotlight. "Second," she said, her voice clear. Paul Delgado was on his feet right behind her. "Second." 3 more board members rose in quick succession. The chain reaction was unbreakable. The voting app on the big screen went live. Green for yes, or red for no. The percentages began to tick upward in real time, the numbers glowing brightly against the darkened house lights. Chloe bolted from the wings, her heels skidding on the stage. "This is insane! You cannot hold a meeting in the middle of a..." Harold simply lifted one hand, his demeanor calm but absolute. The chair recognizes only registered voters at this time. She froze mid-step, her mouth open. the realization dawning that no one was listening to her anymore. Leo tried to shout from the side aisle, his voice cracking. "Elena, come on, we're family. You're seriously doing this here." "Now?" I didn't even give him a glance. I kept my eyes on the numbers. 58% green, 61, 64. Small shareholders, warehouse managers who had earned fractional equity over decades of loyal service, mid-level engineers who had opted for stock instead of raises, were tapping yes without a second thought. They remembered who had fought for their holiday bonuses when Chloe wanted to slash costs. They remembered who had personally rewritten the disaster recovery protocols after the 2021 flood scare. 67%. The long-term institutional investors, the ones who had watched me turn down flashy titles in favor of deeper ownership for years, didn't even blink. Their votes locked in within seconds. 69%. Chloe tried again, her voice louder now, desperate. "Harold, shut this down. She's bluffing." Harold didn't flinch. 70% achieved, motion threshold met. Then 71% snapped into place, a solid wall of green filling the entire screen. Harold turned back to the room. "The motion carries by majority shareholder authority. The appointments are rescinded. All executive privileges are revoked. This meeting is adjourned." The final tally remained illuminated for 5 long seconds, burning itself into the memory of every single person in that ballroom. A collective exhale rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a fork, and the clatter sounded like a gunshot in the silence. Chloe just stared at the glowing green numbers as if her sheer will could make them change. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Leo's phone slipped from his numb fingers and hit the marble floor with a sharp crack that echoed all the way up to the chandeliers. I closed my laptop with a soft, final snap. As the last hand in the room dropped and the voting result hung on the screen, Harold's voice cut through the stunned silence like a knife through silk. "The motion is adopted unanimously. Chloe Sterling and Leo Sterling are hereby relieved of all executive duties and titles, effective immediately upon this adjournment." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Chloe lunged forward from the edge of the stage, her heels scraping on the polished wood. "You can't do this. This is my company, our family's legacy." I didn't raise my voice. I simply turned my laptop screen toward the projector feed, clicking to the next slide with a slow, deliberate motion. The massive display behind us shifted, bathing the entire ballroom in a cold blue light. "I just did," I said, "and to ensure a smooth and orderly transition, there are a few additional measures already in place." The slide was filled with the pre-signed addendum I had prepared at dawn, every single line vetted by outside counsel. It detailed the immediate activation of a 10-year, nationwide non-compete clause, barring both of them from any role in the food supply chain software sector or any related industries. No consulting gigs, no seats on competitors' boards, not even advisory whispers to clients we had spent years building together. Below that, in bold bullet points, was the clause for the immediate forfeiture of all golden shares previously granted to them, along with the permanent revocation of any future dividend rights tied to their now non-existent executive packages. Those shares weren't just paper. They were the safety net Chloe cashed in for her lavish weekends in the Hamptons, the buffer Leo used to fund his ever-growing collection of vintage cars. And in one click, they were gone. Chloe's eyes scanned the text, line by agonizing line, her lips parting as the full weight of the implications crashed down on her. The color drained from her face until she looked like a ghost under the spotlights. Leo, standing just behind her, clutched the edge of the podium, his skin turning a sickly gray. For a moment, I thought he might actually be sick, right there on the expensive Persian rug. "Security," I said quietly into my lapel mic, my tone even, almost bored. 4 guards materialized from the wings, moving with the practiced, unemotional efficiency of men who had trained for exactly this kind of corporate theater. 2 positioned themselves beside Chloe, taking her by the elbows. Their grip was gentle but unyielding, like ushers at a black tie event gone terribly wrong. The other two did the same with Leo, one hand placed lightly on his shoulder, the other ready at his back. My sister twisted against their hold, her blazer riding up, her voice rising in a high-pitched, desperate plea. "Dad, Mom! Do something, tell them to stop!" My father stood rooted to his spot near the front row, his hands clasped so tightly that his knuckles were white against his silver wedding band. His eyes remained fixed on the floor, tracing the intricate pattern of the carpet as if it held some secret answer he'd missed all these years. My mother's face was a tragic mask of streaked mascara and trembling lips, but she didn't move. She didn't call out my name. She didn't even reach for her phone. Their combined 8% stake, once a comfortable cushion for retirement and golf trips, meant absolutely nothing in this room now. There was no vote to cast, no voice to raise, no power to wield. Nothing. The silence that fell was the kind where you can hear your own heartbeat over the low hum of the air conditioning. A single cough from the back row finally broke the spell. Then Harold cleared his throat into the microphone, his baritone voice as steady as ever. "This emergency meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all for your attention and your cooperation this evening. Dessert service will resume shortly." I closed my laptop with another quiet snap, and the screen went dark. The projector hummed off. I gathered my things and walked off the stage, past the velvet ropes and the staring faces of business partners who, just an hour ago, had been shaking Chloe's hand like she owned the future. Now they were giving me subtle, respectful nods, their sudden shifts in allegiance written in their averted eyes, and murmured congratulations. My mother finally moved then, taking a single hesitant step toward the corridor. But my father's hand on her arm stopped her cold. They remained there, silent spectators to the end of an era they had started but had never truly controlled. Outside, the cool Charlotte night air hit my skin as I slipped into the waiting car. The driver didn't ask a single question. He just pulled away from the hotel's curb, the headlights cutting through the light drizzle that had started sometime during the vote. 4 months later, everything looked different. The new nameplate on my office door was simple brushed steel. Elena Sterling, Chairwoman and Chief Executive Officer. There was no fanfare, no company-wide email announcing the change. The next morning, the building just opened for business as usual, except now every single decision ran through me. Our first quarter numbers came in 28% above forecast. The deep restructuring I had been planning for years rolled out without a whisper of resistance. The warehouse automation contracts that Chloe had stalled for 18 months were signed, sealed, and delivered in 9 days. Clients who had been on the fence suddenly called back themselves. Stability, it turns out, sells. Chloe listed her sprawling Lake Wiley house just 3 weeks after the gala. The 6-bedroom lakefront property, complete with an infinity pool and a private dock, sat on the market for 47 days before a cash buyer from Dallas scooped it up. She needed every last penny to cover the accelerated inheritance tax bill that was triggered the moment her golden shares were forfeited. The IRS, unlike family, doesn't wait for drama to settle. Leo sent out 211 resumes in 3 months. Every single interview ended the exact same way. Polite smiles, followed by deafening silence. The non-compete clause was airtight and a matter of public record. No one in the logistics or supply chain software industry would touch him. He finally landed a part-time, commission-only sales job at a luxury car dealership in South Park, wearing the same tired blazer he had on the night he lost everything. My father put their house in Myers Park up for sale in October. My mother refused to stay in Charlotte after the gala photos, and the subsequent gossip hit the local society pages. They closed on a 2-bedroom condo in Naples, Florida, with a view of the Gulf. The moving trucks came on a quiet Tuesday. I found out the same way everyone else did. The real estate listing went live online. There was no goodbye dinner, not a single phone call, just a forwarded change of address form from the post office. The first text from Chloe came 2 weeks after the vote. a single line. "I'm sorry." I deleted it without a second thought. The second one came a month later, a much longer message full of explanations and pleading. I deleted that too. Leo tried next, his voice cracking in a 3-minute voicemail about needing me as a reference for a job. It went straight to the trash. My mother sent a birthday card in November, a handwritten note asking if we could please talk. It went into the office shredder, unopened. I never answered, not once. Power isn't something you inherit. It isn't a gift bestowed upon you at a fancy party with champagne and speeches. It's built, share by share, contract by contract, over 16 years of consistently choosing ownership over applause. I never wanted the stage. I wanted the foundation. And foundations don't apologize when the house built on sand finally comes crashing down. Some families break apart quietly over time. Ours shattered in front of 250 witnesses under crystal chandeliers with security guards holding the doors. And that night taught me the only lesson that has ever truly mattered. Blood might mean you share a last name, but it doesn't mean you share a vote. And in the end, votes are the only thing that ever really counted.